that notion, I think, is something that maybe the civilian populace doesn't quite understand about our community.
Agreed. Our specific pitches to the VA when we were doing our campaign were grounded in that different world that we shared and in service and continue to share today.
This is why representation matters in media, because if you have a group of civilians who have reverence and appreciation and respect and patriotism, they're going to want to talk to us a certain way. And we no, we don't always speak that language. And that's not the only language that we speak. And that's not that's from you to us. That's not from us to us. Right. And sometimes that's funny and irreverent and humorous. But then sometimes when you want that poignancy, that beauty, like you guys did in this campaign, it's got to be really specific and it's got to come from us because we're the ones who know how to communicate that. Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists, and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills.
Episode 172 features Mark Harper, Air Force veteran, former combat camera, former president of We Are the Mighty, and the co-founder of GigLine Media, where he executive produced the VA and Department of War's most recent PSA campaign, Face Your Dragon.
Welcome. This is Veteran Made.
Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American-grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Good morning from the great state of Ohio for me. Good morning from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Mark Harper, welcome to Veteran Made.
Thanks for having me, Kerry. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Been a long time coming, man. We've been text buddies and phone buddies here for a couple of years as we've been, trying to figure out ways to work together and combine forces and get you on the podcast and talk about all things MilVet content. So I'm glad we're finally recording one of these conversations. So don't screw it up.
Yeah, same here. I won't. A lot of pressure and a couple of near misses along the way for us. So
yeah,
great.
No doubt. Yeah, near misses turn into hits on target here at some point, right? It's a volume game in our industry. For those who don't know who you are, Mark, just ground us with who you are, where and when you served, and what you're doing now, and then we'll Tarantino this and go back to the beginning.
Sure. Mark Harper, I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm dating myself now. So I joined a mere months before the towers went down, September 11, 2001. I joined the Air Force when it was, non-wartime, and quickly saw the world change from inside the military. I had two assignments as a communications officer, but the one I spent the most time in was combat camera. Combat camera, as the name suggests, were the combat photo documentarians, the combat videographers, the combat photographers that were taking and documenting everything that the war was doing, or the war machine was doing, the good, the bad, the ugly. I spent half my time doing humanitarian peace mission efforts as well. So it wasn't all war stuff, but it was really amazing. I got to travel the world. I did Operation Iraqi Freedom from inside of Baghdad, and then Operation Enduring Freedom in Djibouti, Africa. But that assignment gave me the stupidity/bravery to pack up and leave at 7 years in and move to LA, really without too much of a plan.
as we all do when we go to LA. Those of us who have done our tour of duty in Los Angeles, some of whom are still stuck there, Ryan. Yeah, we all go to LA with what we think is a plan, or at least if we know we don't have a plan, and we quickly figure out you gotta figure
we know
it
the
out.
location is roughly the right place.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I did. Mine was quick. I did like 18 months, which was good, and then discovered
It's
New
a
York
short
City.
tour. Good job.
It's a short tour. Yeah. Not for us
15 years.
Guys, right? Exactly right. Yeah. I should have done it like my Bagram deployment, 6 months and then gotten out. But no, it was good. I mean, before we jump into LA, I mean, did you pick up a camera as a kid or as a young adult? Like what did you study that in college? Like, what
I did. Yeah. So I, my parents were really focused on me being in STEM, as you would be in the late 90s. So in the Air Force too was not impressed with me going in with an arts degree, right? So I was a computer science major, but we could spend a whole other podcast talking about how I snuck into the burgeoning animation and video production program at Rensselaer Polytech Institute, RPI, in upstate New York. They've been donated $300 million anonymous grant, and they created this kind of world-class studio for students, and we were one of the first in there. So yeah, in high school I was picking up really crummy cameras and running around, and then in college I actually got an opportunity to kind of create my own adventure because they didn't even really have the staff at that point. So I did a lot of animation, I did a lot of video production, I did a lot of editing. It was all hands-on, no theory in my undergrad. So by the time I ended up at Combat Camera, and I got there by just picking up a camera in my first duty assignment and showing that I could do things like make fun of the commanders and do morale videos, and did a couple of like training videos that were funny. And because of that, I got noticed by a colonel who then started the wheels moving to me actually making it over to Combat Camera. So I had that background. When I walked into Combat Camera, I was one of the first. Actually, Jim Fabio would be another one out there, Air Force guy also, who actually had a degree in not only video production, but like animation, motion graphics.
Yeah, there's that like late 90s, early aughts, right? Like you got it in 2001, right? But that experience, that late 90s, like that was it's interesting. Obviously we work in the industry now. Just talking about this the other day with somebody. It's 2026. I mean, that's like 26 years ago, like digital video was a thing, but it was like, now we look at it as like vintage. Like we look at it as like mixed media, right? Like
my
we look
first
at it.
Assignments were tape to tape editing, tape to tape. Wasn't
Yeah.
even in a computer moving timelines around. It was in assets. It was tape to tape.
Yeah, camcorders and like all of that, and we look back on that as nostalgic now. And it is interesting, right? You talk about morale videos, you talk about hype videos, you talk about we've all seen those videos of guys who are recording their commander giving them a hype speech before they went out on a mission, and you kind of watch that stuff now and you're like, oh man, that was a long time ago, because now everything is on these phones that are high quality cinema cameras, kind of like in our pockets, right? Which is wild. What was the journey like for you to go over to Combat Camera and have that? I know I said I wasn't going to ask about too much about your ComCam time, but now I'm interested. That sort of proving yourself through execution, right? Like doing something, like you said, making funny videos, funny training videos, doing things, and then we don't often get noticed like that, right? Somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to move you over here and do this." Like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, well, it felt validating, right? And when I say morale videos, this was not hype videos. This was me roasting a commander through a series of sketches and animation. But it was great because, and it's funny, it was serendipity. I called the Air Force Personnel Center, and just as like a Hail Mary, I called and I said, "Hi, my name is Mark Harper. I really want to do this thing called Combat Camera." And the first thing the person said was, "Well, we're not supposed to give you what you want here in the Air Force. That would make it a more pleasant experience." But as luck would have it, and I'm not kidding, I am holding your file right now in my hand. This is crazy. and we do have a slot open. I'm going to put you in it. But this might mean, someday down the line, you may not get what you're looking for. Do not think that this is the precedent here for your career.
Yeah, you got your one. You got your
got
one.
my one. But every time I made a video, and again, like these roasting videos, even the commander would come and be like, "That was hilarious. Be careful next time." But also, like, thank you. We need more of these like feel good moments, because we're in a lot of not feel good time right now. And then when I got to combat camera, I walked in, and I'll never forget, my troops tried to pull a fast one on me on day one. They came up to me and they said, "Hey, sir, the Avid is offline today. So what that means is we can't add it because we can't get to the files that are in the computer." And I said, "No problem, Sergeant. I actually specialize in bringing these Avids back online. Let me in there." And then he just stops and he goes, "Oh, shit, that's right. You're the one who knows what you're talking about. Never mind, we'll have it done by 5.
Yeah,
and I walked out. And, it went from that moment to them give my troops, who were brilliant, hardworking, the best, coming to me to say, "Hey, that motion graphic stuff. Can you give me a lower third, or can you make like an intro animation for this?" And I would say, "Can I?" And then I would spend, way too much time working on that kind of stuff. But I never picked up the camera, except for one time. And that's a funny story. That was what the trained professionals in combat camera did. And we had some incredibly gifted and talented videographers and photographers who won, many awards. And we were always there on like the bleeding edge of what was happening out in the world. It was truly an amazing experience.
Yeah, I come back to that in a sec. I thought it was going to be a Zoolander reference. I thought you said the files are in the computer.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they were trying to do to me. Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting. Talk about morale boosting through roasting and comedy, right? Like, the rule is, if it's funny, it works, right? You can push. And so what I hear that Colonel saying when he says be careful is like, you got to keep it funny, dude, because if it's not funny, then you're in trouble. But if it's funny, it works.
You get away with it.
And it's something that I don't think a lot of people understand about the military, right? My wife, she and I were not married while I was in the military, but we dated a little bit, and then we obviously spend a lot of time around veterans now with our work and the things that we do. And she's like, "Man, you guys are like really funny, and you guys have this even cross branch, right? Like even working with infantry dudes or whatever." And she's like, "You guys have like a whole language that you use, and it's so funny. It's irreverent and gross and rude and like all of these things." She's like, "But it's funny, and so then it works." And I don't think a lot of people understand that the military is not just this rigid hierarchy and structure of, hey, you just do what you're told when you're told, and like that's it. It's like, no, it's a community of people that needs what humans need, right? Which is humor and time to let off steam, and obviously in appropriate settings and all of those things. But like that notion, I think, is something that maybe the civilian populace doesn't quite understand about our community.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And it's also at the crux of your interview with Ryan, and about how our specific pitches to the VA when we were doing our campaign were grounded in that different world that we shared and in service and continue to share today.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have, well, obviously we'll get to the campaign, which I want to talk about, but like this is why representation matters in media. Because if you have a group of civilians who have reverence and appreciation and respect and patriotism, they're going to want to talk to us a certain way. And we we don't always speak that language. And that's not the only language that we speak. And that's not like, that's from you to us. That's not from us to us. Right. Like, and sometimes that's funny and irreverent and humorous. But then sometimes when you want that poignancy, that beauty, like you guys did in this campaign, like it's got to be really specific, and it's got to come from us because we're the ones who know how to communicate that.
Yeah. Agreed.
So interesting. So you said you didn't pick up a camera. So you've like, so as an officer in communications and ComCam, like you've been executive producing kind of from the beginning. So is that the genesis?
It is. And I didn't even realize what that meant or was. It was project managing in the military. And so by the time I got to Hollywood and I started knocking on the doors, I feel so foolish saying like, I didn't know that I had this producing background. I felt like I was more of like a tactical doer guy. And I started knocking on doors, and I would meet people and do informational meetings. VME, or VFT, Veterans in Film and Television, which evolved to Veterans in Media and Entertainment, it was just starting a couple of years after I would arrive. So I didn't have a blueprint. I couldn't find other people other than the guy whose house I was renting there was a combat camera guy who was out of March Air Reserve Base, which is the reserve version of combat camera, which is out in LA. So you have talented combat camera people on the reserve side that have jobs in industry who do that. So I met some people there and got a couple of introductions, and that started the ball rolling. So I'd meet someone and they would say, "Hey kid, I met with you because you sent ahead this PowerPoint of pictures from the war, like that are happening right now. I don't see these on the news." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a combat camera." And I would do my little song and dance. And then they would say, "All right, kid, what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I was hoping you'd tell me." And they would always say the same thing: "Wrong answer. See you later." And what I would eventually learn is when you have these moments to talk to people who are, well into their careers, they know how to get you from point A to point B. If you tell them, "I want to be a cinematographer. I want to be an executive producer. I want to be a writer." They can go, "Oh, I know so-and-so at such and such, and I will clear the path from point A to point B because I like you. You got a chutzpah." And I had a lot of misfires in the very beginning, but I don't, it was all part of the learning process for me. And so when I got to LA, I also landed there at the beginning of the first writer's strike. So every job fried overnight, gone. And shows were on hiatus, movies stopped filming. And I ended up on the business side of the entertainment industry at the very beginning. I went to business school to kind of pick up where I was missing from my education or where I thought I was going to be if I was going to be in the business side of entertainment. So I went to UCLA, and then I got introduced to a guy named David Gale, who was the former head of MTV Films, and he was just starting this company called We Are the Mighty.
There's so much value. Good friend of mine, she's director of education for Dead Reckoning Collective. Shout out to Professor Danger, Jessica Danger. She always says specificity is generosity. And she talks about that when you're writing, right? If you're writing memoir, or you're writing fiction, or you're writing poetry, when you're being specific to your audience as an author, you're being generous to them. I like to expand that out. It's like when you're being specific with somebody that you're talking to, that you're trying to build a relationship with, that you're trying to network with, that you're trying to get to help you get where you want to go, the more specific you are, the more generous you are being to them, right? We hear about this all the time, especially transitioning service members and veterans who like want to grab coffee or a virtual chat or whatever. It's like, you have to have a specific ask. Here's where I'm trying to go. Here's what I want to do. What's the next step that I need to take immediately in front of me that gets me there, instead of just saying, "I don't know, I just want to be on set. I don't know, I just want to go learn everything. I don't know, I just want to be in LA or New York." You got to be very, very specific about what you want so that you can get people to help you do it.
Right.
Yeah. So We Are the Mighty. Oh, go ahead.
I did have one person, and there's a connection to We Are the Mighty with this as well. So I did get to meet this lady named Amy Powell, who was running interactive marketing for Paramount. So this was right when MySpace and Facebook were the only means of real nuanced and new digital marketing. And so I went and met her, and she said, "You got this really interesting background, and it feels like you can do a lot of stuff still. Like, you know how to use you could build assets in Photoshop. You could work in Flash, and you can edit." And I said, "I can do all those things." She introduced me to her 3 creative directors there, some of which are running major marketing departments at studios right now, and one who went on to like launch Lucasfilm's Star Wars reboot movies franchise, and he did all of those, and he did all the Marvel. His name is Mickey Capaferri, real talented guy. But Amy introduced me to Mickey there. I worked for Mickey. He did everything from making me be Optimus Prime's MySpace page manager, to working on like I Love You Man and Benjamin Button and Star Trek. I like a whole bunch of things. So a lot of really incredible hands-on things on the studio side. And then Amy actually introduced me to someone at UCLA. That's partially how I got into the MBA program there, with a focus on entertainment. And then Amy was also a connective tissue to David Gale. She had worked with David when David was running MTV Films, and Amy was over in Paramount. And so all these this networking is kind of what I'm getting at here. The networking opportunities when you do get them, make sure that you can massage them and provide value in those relationships to help kind of build and bolster, some directive tissue at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and go where they take you, right? Like I would imagine a person who wants to be creative or even a creative executive on the business side is like, what the fuck am I doing managing Optimus Prime's MySpace page?
Oh, but what a blast, though.
They're like, I learned a ton about how entertainment actually works in the world, because at the end of the day, those of us who want to make creative, we want to put it out into the world. So what better way to learn how that works than to understand marketing, storytelling from the marketing side.
Yeah, and for anyone listening, I held up a Optimus Prime helmet that Mickey gave me many, many moons ago as to commemorate my time serving as his supreme Facebook page overlord.
I love it. I'm a tchotchkes guy myself, so I like to keep all of those things as I can too. So yeah, so take us to We Are the Mighty. So you get out there, you kind of go through these networking and relationships and these opportunities and this work that you're doing on the studio side. And David, so take us there.
Yeah. So I met David Gale. I mean, to this day, what an incredible, magnanimous human being. So I met him in a coffee shop, and he was looking for a junior producer for his team. And the website We're the Mighty had not launched yet. He was still kind of assembling, I think, the Avengers as he was looking at it. And I met him, and he said, "Mark, I just love your background. I love that you worked at Paramount. I love that you've done all this stuff, but like what I really need, you did 10 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever it was, in combat camera. Can you do that again? I'm sure you could. You seem very capable." And I said, "David, I can, but that's not where you need me in this company." And I think he was a little bit not put off, but I think he appreciated my honesty. I said, "David, you're never going to find someone who has worked both on the business side, in the studio side, and the creative side, and has had real world combat photojournalism work, who has an MBA from a top 10% school at the time being. I'm kind of a unicorn for you, and what I could help you do probably better is like something on the operations side, something maybe one step up and closer to help you kind of figure out what this is." And he said, "Well, I don't really have that job, but you give me a lot to think about." And I said, "Good luck. I really love what you're doing. It seems amazing. I know you'll find the right fit. I'm sure everyone wants to join this thing from the military community or outside." And he left, and he called me 2 months later, and he said, "Hey, I found that person. They started. They're great." I said, "Congratulations." And he said, "But I also realized that I need someone like you to help me run this, and I need a true veteran's perspective for this." And so he brought me on what would be like, a chief operating officer in the very beginning. So in December, or actually Veterans Day 2014, we flipped the switch. We turned on wearethemighty.com. I started basically then, and we started creating content, and we never stopped. So it's articles, videos, I think it was over 30,000 last check of videos and articles that were created over that time frame. I mean, to today.
Talk to me about the confidence to tell him that, right? I think a lot of folks, maybe folks that are younger, who aren't officers, who don't have an MBA, right? So who don't have that training, who don't have that understanding maybe of how to strategically communicate inside of a growing business and hierarchy, would say, "Yep, I'll take the junior producer role and I'll crush it for you. And while I'm crushing it for you, I will display this other value that I know that I have inside of me, but I'm going to keep it to myself for now. But then I'll start to kind of seed it out to you." You did the opposite. You said, "I'm not going to do that. You need this." And then you waited 2 months. Talk to me about the confidence, and then talk to me about any of the negative emotion you experienced too.
Yeah, well, I honestly, it sounds like I went in with a real plan, and I had a mission, and I knew my value, and I was going to put my foot down and set some, and kind of set his expectations from the beginning. But honestly, two things happened. One, I was a little bit worried that I wasn't going to hit the ground running and do his specific job that he needed. And And I don't know where this courage came up inside of me, because I was at an inflection point in my life, and I did need a job. I think I was afraid of going that far back in my career, and kind of setting the tone of where I was. Now, no, in hindsight, I would have been able to have done exactly what you just said, right? But I think I was worried about sliding too far back. At least salary wise, it was like about half of what I was currently making. And I knew that I actually couldn't survive in Los Angeles off of that. Like, I had done the math as he said it, and he could tell that this was a part of the calculus. So I went back out looking for really terrible jobs after that, knowing that I had to do something. And look, the MBA actually means nothing in this world of entertainment at all. In fact, it's a detriment most times, because anyone who's worked a little bit in creative and has an MBA, if you go to a studio, they're like, okay, you're the guy that like check the box, but you really just want to be making this stuff. So I don't know that I want you here, because someday you're just going to say, oh, can I make this stuff instead? You think you're a creative. I didn't know that going into my MBA process. I'm so glad that I did, because I ended up in a very entrepreneurial, entertainment connective piece, and it did help a lot. It still helps today. But I learned that was not a good check mark to have, nor was being a military veteran, if I'm being honest, back in that time frame. So David just happened to have a need and was starting a thing that didn't exist. And so, the positives were I somehow felt the strength to try to ask for my worth. And I thought that maybe that ship had sailed at that point, and I was going to have to find something bad. So there were positives and negatives into it. To this day, that's the most daring I think I've ever been in a conversation like that, where it came to what would ultimately turn into like, job opportunity.
It's always scary to do things like that. I did something similar a couple of years ago. Then a couple of years later, a gig that I'm working right now came back around. I'd applied for a position that was, named a senior producer contract position. And so because I was a senior producer, executive producer at the time, put my hat in the ring, and they're like, well, no, this is actually a shooting producer. Do you shoot and do you edit? And I was like, no, I don't shoot and I don't edit anymore. I'm very slow. I said, I'm more of a creative director, more of a creative producer, more of oversight, concepting, writing, directing, producing, that kind of thing. And they're like, okay, well, we don't have that position. And I said something similar. I'm like, okay, well, based on this conversation, I think you might need it. So keep in touch, and 2 years later, it, ended up coming to fruition. And it is always scary to do that, especially in a time of need, right? Like, yeah. I was freelancing at the time. I'm like,
I had need then. Like I kicked myself on the way out the door. I was like, I'm impressed and embarrassed at the same time.
Yeah. And it is funny as we tell the stories. It always sounds like we were a lot cooler and more confident than we actually were. In reality, we were just terrified of like, damn, what am I gonna do? So I want to get to Face Your Dragon here. So let's bridge the gap. You're on the forefront at We Are the Mighty, launching it in 2014 with this military and veteran storytelling, which now I think, maybe for some of our like Gen Z service members and veterans are like, what? It's just ubiquitous. We just have content everywhere. Black Rifle Coffee and Coffee or Die and We Are the Mighty and Task and Purpose and Military Times and like all of these things, they just like exist. But for those of us that came up in the early days of the GWAT and were BDUs at home station, like this stuff didn't exist. And now it feels like it's everywhere. So you were at the forefront. Like, what was it like to launch that? And what did the journey look like as you were figuring out, as you were delivering on what you told David, hey, I can help you craft this vision. Like, what did that look like?
Well, we were definitely building the airplane in flight. What David wanted to do was create a platform for the military community to tell its own stories. And he did find some incredible people in the very beginning. So his first hire was Ward Carroll, who was the editor-in-chief of military.com. So him coming over, having all this knowledge of how to like build a site that was generating content, what to look for, and understand some analytics in the very beginning was very helpful. We were a thing of its own at this point. Task and Purpose would launch a month and a half after we started. And then the guys from Black Rifle Coffee were at that time in Article 15 clothing, and they were doing their own sketches. And we would bring those guys in, Matt Best, Jared Taylor, and Vincent, forgetting his last name, we'd bring them into the studio whenever they're in LA, and we'd have them do like little sketches and stuff. It was pretty great. But we didn't exactly know what we were doing. And so what we did is stuff. We just made stuff to see what stuck. So the articles would go out. I'll never forget one of our first big ones was like 27 photos of life on an aircraft carrier. And our social media guy went and said, hey, I know an aircraft carrier group on Facebook. He posted the article. The website shut down when 6,000 people hit the site in a matter of like a 10-minute span. And that was amazing. And it showed a couple of things. One, we had a really bad technological backbone for the site. And two, the power of social media and it finding those targeted eyeballs for content that was really syncing with the military community. And so we would find hits and we would try to generate more content that looked like that. We were spending a lot of money. We were spending upwards of 40 grand a month on video projects, content, salaries, 1099s, you name it. And, at first it felt like throwing money into an oil drum in the middle of the room and just burning it. But because of it, we showed a demonstration of proof that we could build and lead an audience and we could create content. And Verizon's Go90 platform had just started and they were looking for military content as like a small vertical in it. That Go90 platform would someday be rebirthed as or look very similar to that failed Quibi experiment. Both of those, didn't do so well for obvious reasons in retrospect, but both of those things fueled the smaller builders out there because they gave us money to create series. This is where I first met Ryan Curtis. So we were greenlit for 6 series, and two of them, I think he did. Well, he did Oscar Mike, which he was the host of. And then he did this No Shit or There I Was animated series, and he directed both of those for us. And they're still 2 of my favorite projects to this day. So that's where I first met him, and that was probably 2016 timeframe. And we'd known each other and seen each other at the American Legion Post 43. But that was that first connective tissue. I'd be remiss if I didn't say we had some other incredible talent that David went out and saw. Blake Stillwell, who now runs We Are the Mighty over at Recurrent. David Logan Nye, incredible writer and content creator. And he just, on the writing side, and then August Donnell on the video side. We were like the early DNA for the company. That was like really there in the very, very late hours, putting together the content and kind of building what that ecosystem would look like in the early 2015 timeframe. So we were very much kind of trailblazing and kind of beholden to the terrible world that is digital publishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think with traditional media, you always, back to what you said about just making stuff and putting it out there. Traditional media, up until, right around this time frame that you're talking about, you needed to prove the concept before you put the content out, right? You had to justify the spend, you had to justify the media buy, or if it's organic media, you kind of had to justify what you think your audience might like. Whereas what you're describing is, let's put a bunch of stuff out there that we think the audience, the consumer might like and see, and let them tell us exactly what it is that they like. And then you whittle it down from there. And then that frees you up to continue to have, a little bit more, momentum and courage to like just keep trying things, right? I think that's what Jared and Matt and those guys do so well. And that's what, I think all kind of skit-like content or digital content or just all of this stuff, like the hit rates are not going to be 100%, right? It's like baseball. It's like if you bat 250, that's really good. And you just have to be willing to put things out there that might not work because it's going to help you figure out what will work, what might work, what you can work on, what you can keep going on, right? All of these different things. And I think that the new landscape allows for that and the old landscape didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's talk about your relationship with Ryan. So he did those first couple of things with you over there, and then you guys kept in touch and kind of worked together. Let's kind of move through that time and get us to the present.
Sure.
With this campaign.
Yeah. So I'll shortcut a lot of this. So Ryan, we stayed in touch. We hired him a couple more times for some other commercials that we did. I think TrueCar was one of them. And look, it turns out running a digital publisher is a very, very hard thing, and you're beholden to a lot of things out of your control. How much Facebook allows their audience to go, see your content and push over, how many ads you can sell to a USAA to keep the lights on. And so we ran out of funding a couple times, actually. And by the time 2019 came around, we were at a point where we were in some serious trouble. And I think all digital publishers kind of go through a version of this, but we were so heavy into content, we kind of left the business model behind, or at least one that we were able to kind of replicate revenue streams for. So 2019 happens, and I go to the board and I petition the board of We Are the Mighty to let me start this service disabled veteran-owned small business that I would name GigLine, with another member of We Are the Mighty, Chase Milsap. And they granted it. And the idea was, look, we're going to go bankrupt. We need to find other avenues of work. If I can create a sidecar or a sister company to We Are the Mighty, perhaps we can keep our production engine running. At the time run by August Donnell, Navy veteran, who I mentioned earlier. So they said yes. They ended up giving me $300,000 to keep the lights on, to hit payroll like 4 more times. David Gale moved back into content creation at a company called Gunpowder and Sky, and actually tried to take a couple of, this positively, a couple of our properties we were working on and bring them to life for TV and film. And we had to take the company down from 24 people to 8. It was a really rough time frame. And saying you're going to win government contracts isn't as easy as actually getting them awarded, turns out. So here we are, 2019, now running 2 companies. And we do get awarded in 2020 as the world is falling apart, COVID, a contract to do 75 videos for the VHA, the Veteran Health Administration, largest part of the VA. And through that, GigLine was actually launched and born. So we did that project, and that project's success would ultimately yield being competitive to be awarded this lethal means safety campaign. And this is where Ryan comes in. So I kind of missed here that we did turn the company around from 2019. GigLine was fledgling, did its thing. And then We Are the Mighty started to take off. That lean, mean fighting machine happened to take some steam. All 8 of us banded together. There's Tessa Robinson. There was Catherine Hummel, who was running sales. Tessa was running We Are the Mighty at that time. Cortez Riggs joined the team in loosely 2020, 2021 with his military influencer conference. And so We Are the Mighty became a little bit mightier because now it had the military influencer conference. Chase, Augie were there, and we really turned it around, and we started generating revenue, and we had our first profitable year in 2020, our first profitable quarter in 2020, our first profitable year in 2021, and in 2022, we were acquired by a Recurrent. And we went from being, mighty with our small team to being inside of a 300-person company. And then we were elevated to run the sales team. And I was installed as the general manager for all the military teams there, task and purpose, etc. I left Recurrent in March of last year, right when this project was about to pick up some steam. So this project, Lethal Means Safety, at the VA, was obviously focusing on death by suicide for the military community, and specifically lethal means is, through a violent means, through a weapon, and so or through a medication. I shouldn't have said violent means as much as by those means, lethal means. So reached out to Ryan and said, "Hey man, I would love for you to direct this. We need to come up with some concepts. We need to pitch them to the VA." So that was a quick way of bridging the gap from then to right at this moment.
Yeah. So take us into it. What was the concepting phase like for you on your end as you brought him in? Obviously, Ryan and I talked about this, and the audience has kind of heard it from his side. Like, this concept that ended up getting awarded and created and produced and distributed was his home run on his end. And he mentioned, needing to convince you that this was something you guys should put forward. So I'm curious just to ground the audience, right? Like I said this last week, you and I do similar things, right? As an executive producer, you're over creative and you're over the business side, right? So you're looking at the entire production creative ecosystem as a whole and saying, I have to guide this ship. I have to fly this jet here, but I've got other people that need to be doing things. But at the end of the day, like you're the one who's going to say, all right, client, VA, Department of War, here is what we're putting in front of you. So what tension, and I say that in a good way, that positive creative tension existed between you and Ryan as you were working through what to put in front of the client?
It was slightly different, but I only know this because of the battle scars that I wear on my side of like trying to figure out how I'm going to position this to the VA and how I'm going to assemble things in the background. So the first round, Ryan and I came up with 5 concepts. I came up with 1. He came up with 4. He is a creative genius. He is a machine. It's almost too easy when working with him. He's really great. Even better as a director on set too. More on that later. But we pitched, as our primary pitch, this idea from one of my coworkers at We Are the Mighty, who shared a very vulnerable story and was willing for that to take the big screen. And we thought it was a slam dunk. Every time we were even pitching it, we were tearing up. And VA said, this hits a little too close to home for the hospital itself, and therefore we need something else. And in the background, Ryan's like, we got to take some big swings here too. And I said, hey, I think we can get Rudy. And he's like, oh yeah, I know Rudy. And I'm like, I think I can get Rudy. At this point, Chase, who was mentioned earlier, has spun off and he's managing or working very directly with Rudy. And Rudy's on Special Forces on Fox. And so I reached out to Chase and I'm like, hey, would Rudy be in a suicide prevention commercial? And he's like, yeah, I think so. Great. So go back to Ryan. I'm like, I think we can get him. He's like, great. And then, as Ryan mentioned, we were both kind of getting nostalgic about, okay, what are some like crazy concepts we can bring out? And I found this article that I'd written, had not written, but I was there for We Are the Mighty, where we're going through all the old Marine Corps commercials, and that Balrog / dragon. In that one commercial, I was like, what if we could do a dragon? And Ryan was like, oh, you want dragons? Here come 5 dragon concepts. And he came back with, all these amazing concepts. And the biggest one that we ended up pitching, and we put at the very bottom of our pile because we're like, no way they're going to pick this. No way they're going to pick this dragon concept. Put it at the very bottom, and that was Rudy, joined by members of the military community from all walks of life, all conflict eras, go up to confront the dragon, and Rudy leads the charge and jumps at it. This metaphor in life of facing your dragon. And so we went in to go pitch it. And this time they'd already heard, our ideas the first time, and they weren't shy with us, the VA. And it was the 5th concept of 5. And this lady, Bobby Hoffman, was like, no, skip to the bottom, go to the last one first. And we're like, oh gosh. And so Ryan is like, okay, here we go. And he pitches it, and she goes, that one, we're going to do that one. And I remember Ryan and I looking at each other like on the Microsoft Teams being like, oh, wow. We get off the call and we go, oh, wow. And then I go, oh, shit, I got to make a dragon. I call Chase back up and I'm like, Chase, what if Rudy is jumping at a dragon? And he's like, you want Rudy Reyes to jump at Barney? And I'm like, no. It's not going to be Barney. It's a big dragon. And he's like, you're going to screw up this dragon. And then the whole thing's going to be like, we're going to be a laughing stock. And I'm like, I'm not going to screw up the dragon. And I didn't. But I didn't know that I wasn't. And Chase went back and told Rudy, and Rudy was like, hell yeah, brother, let's do it. And so we started this painful journey of finding the VFX shop that would actually put this thing together. And then Ryan did, a ton of the, all of it, all the producing, all the directing, to wrangle an ensemble, cast, team, extras, everyone from the military community, and bring us all together to shoot this last year.
So, peek behind the curtain here, right? A lot of times when you're throwing multiple concepts, half a dozen or so at a client, it's easy to get lost in that process and then forget that you're going to have a budget assigned to whatever concept that they choose, right? So you guys choose a VFX heavy concept. Were there budget ranges for each of your concepts, or was this like truly one where you're like, oh shit, I got to do this in some constraints that I wasn't prepared for.
So to Ryan's credit, I went to him and I said, are you worried about the dragon? And he said, no. And I'm like, how much are you putting towards the dragon of the budget that we had presented? And he's like, man, we got to make money stretch. So it's roughly a little bit over 10%. And I'm thinking to myself, this whole thing is based on how real this dragon looks or not. And, that's when panic set in. And I'm like, Ryan, you got enough to do. I'm going to take the dragon off your hands. And one of the jobs I yada over before in my past at Hollywood is I worked for a company called Technicolor. Technicolor owned moving picture company, which was one of the most prestigious VFX houses in the world. It led all of the Harry Potter series. It was the lead production house on it. So they had the capability set to do it. I had met the CEO 10 years earlier. I reached out to him and I said, hey, you probably don't remember me, but I was that snot-nosed kid in the hallway that one day, or at a couple of company events, who came up enamored, wide-eyed, and said, I love what you're doing. And I said to you, someday I would love to work for you. I'm changing that. I would love to work with you. I have a laughable budget, but an incredible mission that affects both military community here and in the UK, because the UK is where it's based out of. He writes me back on LinkedIn almost immediately, sets up a meeting. This is Friday night, sets up a meeting on Monday. I'm on the call with the team. I explain what we're trying to do. They're all excited because this is a really cool, big, and I didn't know this, but VFX houses love these major monster-led VFX because it's good for their reels. It's good for a whole bunch of things. Awards, blah, blah. And he's on and he's like, Mark, I love this. I want to do it. We're going to do it. I got to hop off, talk to my team. He hops off and they're like, who are you that he just said yes without hearing a budget? What is your budget? And I'm like, it is the following. And they're like, oh man, that's tough. And I'm like, right. And they're like, all right, well, we need half of it to start. And so I cut a check and we began. The 2-minute version of how terrifying this became is 2 months into the VFX of the Dragon, MPC sadly went bankrupt. And they took half my budget with them. And now I needed a dragon with half of a terrible VFX budget for a VFX-driven commercial. And the crazy thing is, one of the guys on the team stole the hard drive out of MPC. Maybe I shouldn't be saying it this cavalierly. Took the hard drive out as the doors were closing. And they locked on a Friday, and the following Monday, a new team and a new company was created out of that rubble. Everyone was caught by surprise that this went bankrupt overnight. It was Technicolor that went bankrupt, and they shut down their animation studio and 2 visual effects companies. And MPC was just standing there like, what just happened to us? And all these incredibly talented designers and animators and artists. And so a small team emerged from that, Arc Creative, and they had the drive. They picked it up and they went with it, and they went crazy with it. They touched every single scene.
Did you say Arc Creative did the VFX for this?
Yes.
So you and I were chatting at the time. The mill was working for me on some VFX heavy projects. Everything shut down like you just described. One of my good buddies, the producer at the mill, is Mark Driscoll. And
so I went to MPC. MPC sent me to the mill, and the mill is who shut down with all of those. Yeah.
I was just talking to Mark earlier this week.
He did it.
I had no idea that. And okay, we'll chat offline. We'll chat offline about that. I texted you about that earlier this week. There was a Department of War thing that he was telling me about.
Okay.
That was one of the things that I texted you about. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just it's relevant because the mill was working for me on a bunch of gigs. They shut down, and then they spun off Arc. I know Arc.
That's what happened to me, right? That's what happened to me.
So,
so this gave Ryan a little bit more opportunity to do a lot with it. So Ryan was just so perfect on set as a director with the clients, with everyone. It is shocking how calm and cool he is on these giant sets with all these moving pieces and everything going wrong every second. The first day of shooting, you could not see more than 3 feet in front of you. And by the end of the day, it was because of the fog. By the end of the day, It was clear, sunny, blue sky. So talk about having to like match shots and sequences across that. And this is where ARC came in and they smoothed everything out. I mean, talk about fixing it in post. Ryan did everything he could have done right for all the variables he had. That they came in and they just kind of smoothed it all out and did a whole lot of things that were way above and beyond for, you know, a company of their size and you know, what our budget was.
It's production, baby.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely crazy. But because of that, we were able to take our extras and augment them. So we had an augmented crowd in it. We were able to, you know, match all these different scenes. And then the dragon on set, we came up with the idea to change the creative and add fireballs instead of like what would have been, I think, like little IED bursts that when Rudy is running and the dragon is shooting fireballs down. And that was like ARC on the fly, us calling ARC and saying, hey, can we add fireballs? And they're like, oh, geez, sure. And we did. And it was great. We had someone from ARC who was in the mill at the time on set who was incredible as well. And he helped actually behind the scenes as well, make sure that this all carried forward correctly.
Yeah, that's when you're shooting VFX, it's not just a part of your post budget, right? It's part of your production budget too, because you need those people on set to help bring everything together and make sure that the physical production crew is doing everything properly, right, for them to get to work on those files. I mean, so wrapping things up here, I mean, for you, Ryan gave his answer, but I mean, from your perspective, like, what does it feel like to deliver the VA's most successful PSA campaign here, to speak to our community the way that you did, and the team you put together? How does it feel for you?
I mean, it's incredible. It's humbling. It was a double-edged sword at the same time. People loved it. People hated it. But no matter what, you were talking about it, and that was the point. The people that hated it were, you know, I think more aligned in the 2A community and were misunderstanding or their interpretation of the PSA was that, you know, take your guns and lock them up. And, you know, that wasn't it. And Rudy so amazingly went and defended the PSA many times over on social media, like talking to people purposefully about that exact concept, right? We need the time and the space sometimes in the fog of what's going on in our lives to make better decisions, or just to have that breath to do so. So it was great. And, you know, I think at various places in the VA, it is celebrated, or it's, you know, just kind of looked at as like, wow, we did something really big, because it is the biggest thing that the VA's done concept wise, right? Well out of their comfort zone. And, you know, I'm proud of all the people and the bravery of the Office of Suicide Prevention inside of the VA for like peaking that concept and doing it, all the way up to the people that finally said yes at the very top of the chain of command there. And we had to go in and pitch and show them the commercial. And, you know, with the data that we were bringing, with the reach that we were showcasing for how this was going to, you know, impact the community, and how we were going to move people from point A to point B in this journey of firearm storage. We did just that, and we did very much over deliver on the campaign, and I'm extremely proud of what we did. But it really was the heavy lifting of the entire team that made that happen. So real special thanks to Ryan Curtis for all that too.
Yeah, incredible work. Super happy for you guys. Super proud of you guys. And appreciate you sharing your side of it. Mark, before I get to the open-ended question, where can folks find you? Where can folks find GigLine? Where do you want to drive traffic here?
Yeah, GigLineMedia.com is, you know, where I think you can see all the work that we've done over the years. That's the best place for all that. That's where you can find me. What's the other question? Like, what are we working on now?
Well, no. So, I mean, the kind of last question here is like, I mean, you can chat, you can discuss what you're working on now for sure. But at the end of every episode, I ask, you know, what's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? It could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we talked about today. But what's on your heart and your mind? Also, feel free to share what you're working on.
No, not to be unoriginal, but you know, I think I'll touch on what Ryan said, which is, it is so important that members of our community are the ones telling the stories back to members of our community. And that's one really incredibly powerful thing that I want everyone to think about and sit with. I mean, we all inherently know it, but it needs to percolate up to the top. And so there are members inside the VA that really understand that it is for us, by us, is the way the messaging needs to fall. And so I really appreciate it when the VA has the ability to go out and bring in teams like us to tell these stories, because it resonates on a much different level than the understanding that most creatives at a more civilian driven company could ever really understand the nuances of our world and ecosystem. So I love that more and more members of our military community are coming together to become creators. There's such a big wave of influencers that stay in the military. I really love that. They get their social media credibility and they stay in. We need good people to stay in the military and to rise through the ranks and to continue telling stories. And we need those people also take those experiences outside and help bring new people into the military, or just to help the military community come together.
Well said, brother. Excited to keep our conversations offline going. I'm sure we'll do this again online at some point, and we'll turn one of those near misses into a hit here soon.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks.